silence, I want us all to be remembering all of the police officers who have lost their lives over this past month, and say a quiet prayer that we can bridge the divide that's causing all this hate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. Fire evacuation plan. Please note that in the event of an emergency, the fire department has requested that legislators and all others move at least 1 block away from the county office building in order not to impede the firefighters in their duties. Cell phones. Please silence cell phones for the duration of the session. Microphones. Please be reminded to use your microphones when speaking so that you are recorded for the official record. Roll call. Allen.
Here.
Bartels.
Here.
Belfilio.
Here.
Berkey.
Here.
Briggs. DeLon.
Here.
Donaldson.
Here.
Fabiano. Gerantine. Green.
Here.
Hepner.
Here.
Lab.
Here.
Litz.
Here.
Lopez.
Here.
Lauren.
Here.
Mayo.
Here.
Maloney.
Here.
Parity John.
Yep.
Parity Richard. Roberts. Rodriguez.
Present.
Ronk.
Here.
Warrow.
Here.
20 present and 3 absent.
In keeping with having a session for each month, a theme for each session each month, we've chosen this month to recognize Recreation and Parks Awareness Month. You know, one of the best things about what we have here in Ulster County is our majestic beauty and all of our parks and public spaces. You know, Sojourner Truth Park, the county pool, Kingston Point, you know, the list goes on and on and on. The walkway over the Hudson, all our various rail trails. So this month I'd like everyone to make sure you get out, enjoy the beautiful weather when it's not, you know, 90 degrees or 95 degrees. And if you do go out, make sure you, you know, hydrate excessively. And, you know, and enjoy all that we have to offer here in Ulster County. Tourism, agritourism, and recreational tourism are our largest, you know, contributors to our economy. So that's what we're doing this month.
Chairman?
Sir.
Is that the Esopus Lighthouse? Looks like it.
Yes, it is.
Just wanted to make sure.
Well, the highlight for that goes to our wonderful Deputy Clerk, Jay Mahler, because she chooses all the photos. So there's various communications on file. Everyone, you know, if anybody, you know, sees anything you want to take a look at, you know, Brianne and everybody worked very hard to put all that together so it's very easily accessible for everybody. And we have one birthday this month. It already happened. Legislator Tracy Bartels on July 7th. This month, I've granted privilege of the floor to the Town of New Paltz historian and other members of the Poorhouse Memorial Committee who are going to share information regarding collaboration and creation of a Poorhouse Memorial to be located at the Ulster County Fairgrounds and the pool in New Paltz, at the pool in New Paltz. So if you folks want to come up. Right there.
I have to say the toughest thing about this is I was told I had 12 minutes. I could go on for about 4 hours, and I actually have done very long talks about a topic that I'm very passionate about. So I'm going to try and talk really fast so I can try and get an hour in 12 minutes. So, so if I'm talking too fast, just let me know. I do have a little PowerPoint, so I'm going to give you a little history of the site. Some of you I recognize, and some of you I know were here 15 years ago when I started doing some of my research, because I do see some familiar faces here. About 16 years ago, I was teaching a class at SUNY New Paltz and went through some of the town of New Paltz death records. I was using it for a primary source activity. And while I was doing it, I kept seeing in the right-hand column under burials, Ulster County Poorhouse, Poor Farm, Almshouse. Started making lots of phone calls and click, okay, there it is. I went up to, I'm trying to think what floor it was, but that actually took a giant table, that map was there. And I started looking for where the cemetery might be. And if you see that pen, it kind of looks like a Gulliver's Travel kind of thing. See all those indents in the ground? Where the pen is where the pool is, and right underneath, in back of it, are indentations. I started doing my research, and the county actually gave me a really nice grant to set up a website. And then from there, I actually got a grant the following year through Ulster County, actually it was the New York State Archives, to develop a curriculum that would be used for middle and high school students on the history of poverty and the rise of the poorhouse system. So I have to say I made a lot of phone calls, kept going, and I'm just going to give you a very brief introduction of what a poorhouse was, what it was used for, and where we are right now. Because Trina's here, which is the really exciting part of this whole story where we go to. Click. Okay. I don't have one of those things. Anyway, before the poorhouse, and actually I did set up an exhibit for the town of New Paltz this past year on the history of poverty before the poorhouse. So that's anything before 1827, 1828. And you look at how people were treated. And one of the things that was done, which was the hardest part to think about, was there would actually be a kind of podium where people that were in need were auctioned off, which meant people would say, okay, I'll take John. I'll take, for $20 a month. And someone would say, I'll take him for $15 a month. And whoever the lowest bidder was would get the person. So that was this public auction. There was also binding out where they would contract somebody. Girls, it was 18, boys 21, if I'm not mistaken. I have that on a slide. And then there was something called outdoor relief, where often it was the churches that did it, and they would give you a small amount of money for food or housing. Click. This is actually a map from 1858 that shows the location of the poorhouse, which is exactly where the fairgrounds and the pool is right now. Click. There's a blow up of it. Do you see where it says poorhouse? Okay. Actually, 1827 is when, I think that's the next one. 1827 is when the county first purchases the land from the Merritts. And those of you that have ever been to the pool, to the left of the pool, there's a small Merritt family cemetery. And I know the photographer in the back, the reporter, I showed her right at the, there's a section of the pool where the children's playground is. There's a tiny broken tombstone there that was also a Merritt family tombstone. Click. Actually, this is an indenture that was for a boy named Morris Schoonmaker. He was 8 years old, and boys 21, girls 18. And when you left, you were given a suit of clothes, a Bible. And when you were indentured, that meant that you could not leave. You were available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Click. And actually, this was from Poughkeepsie, but again, there were advertisements in the paper for children, like, do you want somebody? And I know I've looked at ledgers in New Paltz. I know there was a Ralph Lefevre's, actually it was his father's ledger. And in it, it said, went off to the poorhouse, picked up 2 boys. And you just go, if you needed labor, you get the boys for free, they'd come and work for you, and the county didn't have to pay anything for them. So again, if you looked at the poorhouse, the type of people and who was being taken care of there, you get people that were homeless, you had, people, pregnant women that didn't have anywhere to go to, you had children that had no families, you had people that came in with illnesses, and they actually had something called a pest house, where they said it was kind of open to the elements, and I kind of visualized them just kind of shoving the food underneath something and just kind of letting them be there till they died. And then you have nursing facility, like for people that were elderly. And then you have seasonally unemployed people. You have D&H canal workers. You have aqueduct workers. You have people, especially like people that were building the roads here. You get Italian immigrants that are here working on building like SUNY New Paltz. You also get, actually, I don't have on that slide, you get people that had mental disabilities. For quite a while, people that were insane, that were called that. Click. There's a photograph, if you've never seen what the buildings look like. There's a Schultz photo. Click. I pulled out of the probably 100 clippings I might have or more of news events. If you read that, there's a little interesting line in there that they were saying that there wasn't enough heat there, and one of the one of the board of supervisors said, "We don't want to make them too comfortable there." So again, the poorhouse was set up at that time to save the county money, because taking care of people individually was too costly. And the poorhouse system was meant to, hopefully, there would be barns, there would be animals, there would be crops, they would be able to sustain themselves without costing the county, but it didn't really end up like that. It did cost money. And there was such corruption, especially if the party of the superintendent of the poor was different from the legislature. You'd see quite a bit of things in the newspaper about the supervisors. So click. And again, article after article about corruption. People would say that in the morning you'd see the coal wagon coming in with the coal, and then in the middle of the night in the dark, the wagon would be leaving with the coal because the superintendent had sold the coal out. Click. Again, I was so fortunate. I know Nina's not here, but Nina's the county clerk, has worked so hard to preserve some of the documents and the archives that were left from the poorhouse when it was taken down in the 80s. And there's quite a few of the books. This was an early admission book. And when I created the website for the county, I picked certain years that I put admissions in. And so that's what an admission looks like. Again, this was some of the stories that I would see, because again, it was such tight quarters, there wasn't any ventilation, the food was poor, children would come in, families would come in, and there would be a lot of deaths that would happen there. Click. Sometimes when I do a talk, I ask people to look at this. Since we're not really having discussion, I ask people, what ages do you think you'd see the most people? And it's actually interesting to see young people were the people coming in at this point. Again, every year it changed, but at this, if you took a still shot of this time period, that's what you see. Click. Again, if you look at different time periods, when you think of the 1850s, you think about, okay, what's going on in the United States in the 1850s? 1850s is the Irish, we get the potato famine, and you get all these Irish immigrants coming in. And what happens actually is that all these young men, a lot of young men, come into the port in Kingston. They get something called ship fever. There's nowhere for them to go, and they end up at the poorhouse. But again, when you look at the reasons for people being admitted, people thought at that time people were coming in there because they had drinking issues. Oh, they're all drunks there, people would say. But that wasn't the case. If you look at the figures, you see again, do you see which is the biggest numbers? Can you read that? Can you read it?
No.
Can you read it out loud? They could,
Oh, you would like me to?
the two highest numbers.
Destitution and sickness, is that it?
Yeah, destitution and sickness were the two main reasons.
I was wondering what the difference between lunacy and insanity was.
I think different secretaries, or they just categorize them different ways. So I'm not sure. People with mental disabilities, I guess they have all kinds of names that I guess we shudder when we think of how people were classified then. Click. And again, this slide is about the months. And again, if you look at it, the winter months, again, when people, again, you have people working on farms that are laborers, or again, as we said, D&H canal builders, and it's freezing out. And you see people coming in with no toes, toes frozen off, fingers frozen, and coming in because they have nowhere to go. 2 minutes, uh-oh. Click, click, admissions, click, click. Okay, stop there for a minute. The most important thing about our poorhouse, which makes us world famous, is that in the 1870s, different studies were done. Oh God, now I'm trying to talk so fast because I have 2 minutes. Okay. Anyway, there were all these studies that were done, and they talked about a woman that was named Margaret, who they claimed was the mother of all the criminals. And they looked at her, and a man by the name of Richard Dugdale did a survey, and said they actually called her Ada Jukes. They gave her this nickname, and maybe some of you have heard of the famous Jukes. If you Google them, you will be horrified. After this study was done, they did a census in 1850 called the Census for the Defective, the Dependent, and the Delinquent. And they went to the prisons, the almshouses, the insane asylums, orphanages, and they went and they were trying to look at eugenics. And they started to prove this whole theory of eugenics. Richard Dugdale's book actually was showing that this woman, who was from Binnywater, and 2 of her sisters, as well as she was in the Ulster County poorhouse. So the whole theory of eugenics actually came from our poorhouse, which stretched into the 1930s, which brought people from our country to Nazi Germany to talk about eugenics. So it all came from our poorhouse. Click. Some shots in 1986 of our poorhouse being torn down. And actually people that lived there said that, you know, a lot of people collected bricks from there, people collected papers, and we actually got some more of the files there, and that's one of the saddest ones. But the second most important slide, this was actually a commemoration that we had there several years ago. We had bagpipes. We reburied some of the bones that were eroding on the banks. I had 2 women's skulls. There are 2 cemeteries back there, one that's pre-1880 and one that's 1880 to the 1950s, which is the pool area. And those of you that were here several years ago, I had my students from Vassar did their final project and showed the pool complex with an overlay of burial ground. So those of you that didn't know, the pool area was kind of scooped up, and our people were moved. But anyway, did you, next, okay. This woman has eluded me for 16 years now. There is one tombstone that's at the poorhouse site, and actually the county put her in cement many years ago because her tombstone kept moving. It turned, it went into a hole, someone stole her footstone, but the tombstone now is in concrete. She can't move, and after 16 years, this weekend, I finally found out who she was, who her family was, and I'm working on descendants. So when hopefully our monument gets put up and we have an unveiling, I will have her descendants there. Because Rebecca McClang Brower is, her poem has kept me going for 16 years now, doing my research. And if you look at the poem, and I think that's what got Trina, who's our artist that made this magnificent sculpture, which again has been my dream, has been Fawn's dream for 16 years now, to have a monument that will commemorate this site so that when people come to the pool and they come to the fairgrounds and they're running around and jumping and skipping, they pay respects to the more than 2,300 burials there, and also the thousands of people that have been marginalized by society, that nobody really thinks about them. Hopefully we'll bring tourists there. I have a curriculum for school children, and the last activity I forgot was a field trip to the poorhouse site. So it works perfectly with some of the work I've created already. So if you want to hear the whole big story, I'm going to do a talk soon, and you can hear the whole big elongated story. And Trina, if you can, does somebody like to read? Just read the first paragraph. Is there anyone here? Can you read the first part of the poem?
We'll wait for Who'll weep for me, where near the cold, damp earth lay, and sleep in quiet day by day, and have no more on earth to say? Who'll weep for me?
That's what we're hopefully doing. So, and here's my artist that's created this monument. She's going to talk. I probably gave her 30 seconds.
Hi, everybody. I won't talk very long because artists are more strong on work and shorter on words. Moved to Ulster County back in 1976 and bought the second oldest wooden house in Ulster County that belonged to the Du Bois family. And at that time, I had no idea about the history of Ulster County. Well, I worked as a sculptor for many years, and then I was approached by a woman who was looking for a sculptor to do a sculpture of Isabella, who was Sojourner Truth, grew up to be Sojourner Truth, so I did that. And if you'll go to Port Ewan, in the middle of Port Ewan is a small park, Sojourner Truth Park, and there is a bronze sculpture of an 11-year-old girl, latency, pre-pubescent, and she's carrying rum, and the jugs that she's carrying are period jugs, and she used to go down to the water where the strand is, and she would have some change in her hand, probably. I don't think she had pockets, because she was dressed probably in something as simple as burlap dresses. I'm not sure about that, but that's the way I sculpted her. And then she'd cross over and pick up rum or whiskey or whatever the tavern who owned her needed. So I wanted to mention, when I made her, I knew that she had been whipped when she was when she was 8 years old, because she spoke. Anybody want to take a guess what language she spoke? Dutch. Remember, the Dutch came before the French, before the English. So she spoke Dutch, and her new owner, couldn't understand her. So he marched her out to the barn, and he heated up rods, and he whipped her mercilessly between her thin shoulder blades and an 8-year-old child. So when I did the sculpture, I had a rod, and I decided I want to feel what the energy is to whip a child. So I stood back and I whacked her a number of times, strong. And if the sculpture had fallen, I just needed to do that. And I'm mentioning this for a certain reason. So when you go see her, go around behind and you'll see the marks of the rod behind her. So now that brings me from one dark underbelly of Ulster County to the second one, which Susan has so wonderfully talked about, talking about the poorhouse. I had no idea that this existed, and many people in New Paltz have no idea that this existed. So this is a big secret. This is amazing. And it's interesting that it comes at a time when the country is so divided, as you can certainly see by the Republican convention. So anyway, I was approached by Susan to do another sculpture. I'd finished Isabel and I'd said, that's it, because a life-size piece is a lot of work. So anyway, she said about, Trina, there is this poorhouse. Would you do a monument? Well, immediately I had a vision. And the vision was, at the time, of an aged woman kind of leaning over and maybe a boy with her. And I saw this figure kind of in the rain by itself. So I said to Susan, even though I wasn't planning to do another big sculpture, I'm going to do it. I can see it. Well, as I worked on it, it evolved. I originally took pictures of a 97-year-old friend who's stripped.
They may know who she is, some of them.
Oh, Annette Feinstone. Max Feinstein's? Yeah. So she posed, and she did in the buff, which was, that's Annette, you know, she's a woman of a lot of pizzazz and spunk. Still is, and she's 99 now. So I took pictures of her, and then I started to work, and I started initially making an old woman, but then it wasn't right, and so I, as I say, I go with my instincts, my intuition, which is like whipping, you know, Isabella. So I looked at it and I said, no, it's too descriptive. I want something more, what's the word, archetypal to represent all these people, because they were, most of them, young and then middle-aged, and there were nobody who survived to as old as Annette was. So one day in the studio, I just blurred her features, just blurred them completely. That gave me the idea that she would be a figure of indeterminate age, you know, like 60s possibly, but aged beyond her time, and that half her face and all the detail on one side would be blurred and would be returning to the what do you wrap a body in? A shroud. Yeah, a shroud. Her shawl would become a shroud, and on the shroud are depicted dragonflies, butterflies, and grass, and an occasional little frog at the bottom. 2 minutes. Okay. And this is because represents the potter's field to which she will return. So the Ulster County has been, my kind has been very generous, funding part of this, and also providing for the landscaping and you know, installation of this piece. And we're raising money right now, and she is in mold form. She no longer exists, you know, as a clay piece, but she's in a mold form. And as soon as we get $10,000 more, which doesn't include my artist fee, but that will come, we're going to cast her. And the sooner the better. So if anybody feels like making a donation toward this, I don't know that this is legal, but please give. It would be wonderful. And I think it's, what is it?
Ulster County United Way. It's on the poster.
Oh, it's on the poster. And thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this time, I would like to call upon District 7 Legislator Jennifer Schwartz-Berkey to introduce her guests this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Ronk, for the privilege of bringing this extraordinary project to the floor this evening. I wish you could have been there at the Rondout School auditorium, where people leapt to their feet every time one of these beautiful songs ended. This program by the Sage Arts, which honors the elders of the Rondout Valley Growers Association, moved everyone in the audience, and now they've just done another project about Woodstock elders. And I especially wish that the Rondout Valley representatives, Lopez, Briggs, Rich Parody, and Manijoe Green was there, weren't you there?
And Ron Lapp.
And Ron Lapp. I wish you could have been there. It would have made you very, very proud. Which is why tonight I wanted to bring to the legislature this program, just one glimpse of it, a beautiful song by Mark Brown about Jack Schoonmaker, the farmer. It's about heritage and the arts, which are two of the greatest things that represent Ulster County, especially our agricultural heritage. And it's also about collaboration. 2 organizations, 3 women, brilliant women who are friends of mine, Maria Reidelbach, Deborah Meyer-Dewan, and Colette Ruoff. And so it's with great pride that I share a glimpse of this project with you. Colette?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Chairman, legislators. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is really amazing. So my name is Colette Ruoff. I founded Sage Arts a couple of years ago. I was filled also with a passion, like the previous speaker, to bring our elders more in the center of our community and to give them a voice, to share the benefit of their life experience, which to me seems like a rich treasure that goes unheard and is sort of shut away all too often. And I think it's we all lose from that. So we've had some wonderful experiences in doing this work with songwriters. Our mission is to redefine aging in Ulster County to start. And what it means to be an elder. What does it mean to be an elder? We're all going to get there. What do you want it to mean to be an elder? And I want to talk to you about why I think it's really important that we talk about this. And that's because we're aging as a community. I'm sure you're all aware of what's happening with the demographics. I looked at the Cornell program of applied demographics, and from now till 2040, we're going to have some very high increases in elders in this community. In Ulster, by 2040, it's expected to grow by 68%, while the overall population is expected to decline. So it's kind of shocking to look at. And one of the things that I see when I look at how we're aging as a community is that the role of elders in our community leads to a lot of depression in our elders. And this depression is completely unnecessary. It comes because there is not enough connection to the rest of the community, and there's not enough of a sense of purpose for them. And we all know there's a bias in our culture, right? That there has been for a long time, that we value youth and things that are pretty and shiny and nice, and we don't value things that are wrinkled and old and not as pretty, and where there's a lot of substance that's hidden. So, and one of the outcomes of depression is that people use more health services when they're depressed. They use more social services. And so the demand is very high. And so I feel that it would be a good idea for us to get ahead of that problem. And I'm speaking to you very practically because you're legislators. This is I'm driven philosophically and spiritually and a lot of different reasons to do this, but I'm really focusing on the practical aspects because I think, you all take a stand for quality of life in Ulster County, and I know that's important to you, and I think that we could get ahead of this problem. And not only that, I think there's an opportunity to create an environment that's really, really welcoming and attractive for elders in our community, that we could define ourselves or separate ourselves from other areas in that way. So what helps this depression and isolation? Well, there are two things that have been researched scientifically. One is positive and meaningful relationships with others. I know that also helps me not to be depressed in my life. I think that's true of all life stages. But when elders get older, they lose their loved ones. And it's harder to come up with the energy, and there are more barriers for them to create positive and meaningful relationships with others. So how do we support that? How do we give them a way to do that, or a platform to do that? And the other is to be engaged in some kind of creative expression. There's an increasing amount of research that's going on that's documenting how there are lots of health benefits from engaging in arts, visual arts, theater arts, improvisation, dance, music, etc. So I wanted to say all this because I want you to have some context to understand who Sage Arts is and what we do. So what we do is we pair elders with songwriters to write, who guide them in an in-depth reflective process. They work together for about 3 months. They hear all the stories. and they find some kind of essential theme or essence of that person's life. And collaboratively, they work together to capture this into a song. And that song is then professionally produced. The concert, we were able to get Jay and Molly Unger to play on these songs, backing up the songwriters, and Happy Traum came and lent his beautiful voice and energy to the concert. And that really took it up a notch to a very high level in terms of the professionalism of the music. And we partner with other nonprofits. In this case, we partnered with the Rondout Valley Growers Association, which is absolutely wonderful because it allows us to focus on elders who've been giving a particular way to our community, a particular kind of contribution to our quality of life. So going forward, we want to keep doing this. We see a vision for working to celebrate veterans, teachers, first responders, entrepreneurs, artists in the community. We want to keep partnering with other nonprofits. We feel that there are a lot of elders that are enhancing the quality of life for all of us who ought to be celebrated and honored. But we also want to reach a lot more elders. There are a lot of elders in our communities, through our community centers, through our senior housing, through nursing homes that we believe can benefit. And we are talking to Office of the Aging about how we might partner and do that with them. So I just wanted to give you context for who Sage Arts is before I talk a little bit about the Unsung Heroes Project and introduce Mark, who's our songwriter. He's going to share a song. First of all, the idea of working with elder farmers was sparked in a conversation with a musician friend of mine who was talking about arts and agriculture. And unlike my friends at the Rondout Valley Growers Association, I didn't really understand how fertile a mix this is. And when I met Maria, and she was so passionate about doing this, and she devotes a lot of her time and energy to exploring arts and agriculture and promoting farms, and it was just a magical combination for Sage Arts and the Rondout Valley Growers Association. And we worked hard, and it took a lot of persistence to actually pull this off because it was a little unusual for the farmers to be asked to sit with a songwriter and write a song. You can imagine that was a little bit out of their comfort zone. So that was challenging. I want to note that the Ulster County Funds gave us 46% of the funding for this project, and with a very big thank you. So what did we do? Well, we wrote 7 songs. We wrote 1 poem. And the Rondout Valley Growers Association and Sage Arts collaborated on a short video where we had taken some footage of the elder farmers talking about the old days, and we made it into a very nice video about farming, which you can see on the Rondout Valley Growers Association website right now. And the Rondout Valley High School has an ag program. They were so excited to host us, and they really supported this project, so I want to give a big thank you to Rosario for that. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mark Brown. Mark Brown grew up working on farms. He really understands what it's like to be a farmer and the nature of the work. He was a commercial fisherman, actually. And he's been a longtime resident of Kingston, 35 years. And he's written a beautiful song with Jack Schoonmaker about the Schoonmaker family and the heritage of farming in this area. So, Mark, come on up.
Hi, I'm Mark, and so I met with Jack. I was dragged into this program because I was very busy, but it was really lovely to sit with Jack. I was worried about my time, but when you meet with farmers, you can do it at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it didn't inhibit on my work schedule. We'd meet at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and we talk. Now, Jack Schoonmaker lives in Accord, and right here in our own county, we have the second oldest farm, continual running farm in the country. Jack's family has been on his piece of property in Accord since 1680. They bought it from the Lenape Indians just after the Kingston Indian Wars, and 1680 they bought it. It's right off of Main Street, and the Saunderskill Farm is on 209 as part of their thing. And let's see, the other thing I want to say about that is they built their house. They bought it in 1680. They built the house in 1720. So Jack and Alice, Danny and David, and Diane, they grew up in a house. Jack is the 11th generation. So they're living in a house where people had been sleeping, being born, dying for like 300 years. I mean, it's really hard to sort of get your head around the idea that you're living in a house where your relatives, you don't even know all their names or what they did. So it's really pretty impressive. So they still have the same original piece of property. And to be a farmer today, it's not just about getting up and like doing your farmer thing. You have to find markets. Like in his lifetime, he switched markets in so many different ways and constantly trying to develop and keep their thing rolling. And he told me that the thing that has really saved the farmers in this community was the phrase that somebody said, buy local and support your local farm. And he said they wouldn't have made it this time around if it wasn't for the people that came up with that concept. So Jack's 82, and he is definitely not depressed. He's getting up really early in the morning and doing his thing. And I remember when I was seeing him, we were standing out in the snow. He was showing me his smokehouse, and he's in his socks. And I have my long johns on. Okay, so ready to go for this. 326 years ago, hemmed in by the banks where the Rondout flows, 326 acres of land, here Henrik Joachim Schoonmaker did stand. The Esopus people of the Lenape tribe, the stewards of this land, from them he did buy his first 100 acres of his homestead to be. This was the place and the year, it was 1680. Before the horses, before the barns, before they gathered the stones that the house would sit on, before the teams and the endless toil, was the sleeping, blessed, fertile soil. Look now through these lenses, back 300 years, see the stones that they lifted, the timber they cleared, with each generation a few acres gained. Through this family their work, the sun and the rain. Before the horses, before the barns, before they gathered the stones that the house would sit on, before the teams and the endless toil, was the sleeping, blessed, fertile soil. The names and the faces of the families before, their stories and children, the burdens they bore, are plowed into the soil through the passing of years. And now the fruit and the love of their labor grows here. This farm, it would prosper, and the soil would yield, and hold on to this family for 300 years. Now it's Jack and Alice, Danny and Dave, their children and wives who work it today. Before the horses, before the barns, before they gathered the stone, the house would sit on. Before the teams and the endless toil, was the sleeping, blessed, fertile soil. Now Jack told me, so I'm telling you, you take care of the soil, it'll take care of you. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Jack was going to be here, but he had to work in the greenhouse. Nice. Let's go ahead. He was totally going to come, and he called me. He says, "I can't do it." I'd be like, when we had the thing at the Rondout, he got up and he had to leave early because he had to close up 4 greenhouses. So, yeah, Jack says thank you.
Don't go too far, because at this time I'd like to call upon again Legislator Jennifer Schwartz-Berkey and Mary Worrow, Chair of the Legislative Programs Committee, and Dave Donaldson as the Deputy Chair of the Legislative Programs Committee. For a Pride of Ulster County presentation.
Sure. Before I go on, that was fantastic. It was a great song, and it really was very touching. And I think I speak for all of us on that. Also, this is truly about unsung heroes, and that's really about what this is about. And when we take a look at our elderly, and particularly in this case, farmers, they are truly unsung heroes, because without them, we wouldn't eat. And they're the ones that feed us. And we depend on that all the time. So it's right, buy local. Go to your farmers markets, buy local. Most of us are lucky enough that have those farmers markets in our community. And I thank you for what you're doing with this with the elderly. It is really beautiful.
I just wanted to add how wonderful it is to see a part of our county that is so vital and is on the Cornell Cooperative Board, and we're seeing so many wonderful new things happening, and it's exciting to see that there's a revival in the economy with farmers. So thank you. Okay, so at this time we'd like to provide the Ulster County Award to Sage Arts in recognition of your integral arts project encouraging social interaction and dignity for all seniors, and for your commitment to the community in Ulster County.
And this one also goes to the Rondout Valley Growers Association, in particular Marie Rattlebach and Deborah Meyer-Dewan, in recognition of your grassroots effort, organizing farmers and neighbors committed to celebrating, educating, and advocating the importance of local farming.
Thank you.
Or not. And one more for luck. Thank you. No, it's just like right over from them, but maybe oh, that's so much easier. I don't care what sound it makes.
We've just settled it. Legislator Donaldson's going to sing to us before every meeting from now on.
That's one way to have nobody show up.
At this time, we're going to move to our period of public comment. Vicki, how many speakers do we have?
13 speakers, and the first speaker is Bill Ford.
I qualify to be an elder, I'll tell you that. Just before my 3 minutes start, I say a little bit about my brother, who's 98 and been city historian for 35 years.
Absolutely.
Ford, I think a lot of you know of him. Anyway, he had a fall, got up out of his chair, leg collapsed, and he broke the socket that a hip bone fits into. And he's been in surgery, no surgery. He's been in a hospital for 2 months. He's been over at the Thompson Rehab Center over in North and Dutchess for over a month now. And from not being able to even put any weight at all on that leg, he's now walking 50 feet or more with a walker. So he's okay. I am Bill Ford. I am baby brother. I'm only 93, and you got some tough acts to follow here. So let me start by saying that I have a compliment for you people, but I will not take the time to read it now because I want to get the rest of my story in. So I'll hopefully have time to read it later. Each of you should have a copy of my letter to the Coast Guard Commandant, Admiral Newhook, along with a copy of the front page of an article that was in the Daily Freeman several weeks ago. I do not expect to receive a reply of any substance to my letter as an individual acting on my own. And those of you that know me understand that I am very independent and I do not speak for any group or any committee. I'm strictly on my own for what I have to do and what I have to say. And I gotta tell you, I have 3 different projects I'm working on now. So, that said, I am asking for help. As I see it, this is an issue of great importance to all of the people in the Ulster County, not alone Kingston. And silence will play right into the actions of the Coast Guard. I'm asking you as individuals and as a group to help me alert all who can remember what a pleasure it was to just sit on the beach at Kingston Point, or better yet, to stick your feet in the Hudson. It's been a source of pleasure for generations and has served over the years as a wonderful attraction for tourists. And plans are on the drawing boards to restore more of its past glory. Plans that will never happen if the action of the Coast Guard prevails. And imagine our riverfront beach with 80% of its area dominated by a tanker with a silhouette higher than this building, blocking the view of the Hudson. And that's what the Coast Guard is planning. So, no one that I've talked to had any notice of this hearing that supposedly took part, and we don't know even where, and those who favored it were strictly for-profit people, and I doubt if any of the riverbank communities or anyone concerned with the historic past of the river that literally was responsible for the earliest settlement of New York State and were invited to come to that hearing. So what I'm asking for is a public hearing open to all concerned citizens to be held in the areas affected by this Coast Guard action before it is approved by our silence. And if I got time, I will read what I wanted to say to the committee.
Very briefly.
Okay? I want to thank each of you for your work that you do on behalf of all of the citizens of Ulster County. And people don't realize how much the successful operation of any government body depends upon the hard work of committee members. I do, and I do thank you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. Thank you.
And this is a picture of those tankers. They are enormous. 8 million gallons they hold. Thank you again.
Gina Funk.
Hi, thank you so much for hearing me today. I'm Gina Funk. I am a person in your community. I want to ask how many of you have children to raise your hands. And how many get to sing them to sleep at night? How many want to sing them to sleep at night? Just 2? Okay, 3. How many cannot sing their children to sleep at night? That's 5 too many. I am here to raise awareness of a serious issue concerning our children. The children in our community are being forced to live with abusive parents. When a mother reports abuse, she loses the rights to her children. And there's nothing she can really do to get them back. Mothers who are not found unfit can't prove that they're fit. Is the system broken? And if it is broken, how long has it been broken? I think for a long, long time in history, women have to give up their children to people who are not safe or who are not the mothers. The mothers have to give up their children. Taking a kid away from a mom and a mom away from her children leaves long, long damaging effects on both the mothers and children. How are we going to keep our homes safe if we can't call the cops when our lives are in danger, being threatened, and we're in fear for our lives? And calling legal law enforcement doesn't help because the woman is hysterical, crazy, or trying to interfere with the father's parenting. Doesn't mom know best? How does a judge know best? How does an attorney of a child know best when they haven't spent the last decade with the man who threatened to chop them up on a regular basis? What could help? Can law enforcement have an incentive to follow through and become the support system for these women? Because these women are told that they need a support system, but there's only 3 sources around here, which is Family of Woodstock, Crime Victims, and Legal Services of the Hudson Valley. And New York City can't help, Albany can't help get these children into safe homes. What's a woman to do when the fear of repercussion from her community
Please wrap it up.
is turning her from a victim into a criminal and further victimizing the victims? The only way I can connect with my children is by ringing this bell. Thank you.
Alana Orr.
Thank you for having me tonight. Being that this month's theme is Parks and Recreation, I figured I'd piggyback off of that with my opening statement to mention that sex offenders aren't allowed within a certain area of parks. You'll understand that, right? Now, you might be surprised to know that judges in Ulster County Family Court have given child custody to registered sex offenders. How does this happen? It can start with a mother reporting abuse, either in family court, to CPS, or to law enforcement. And more often than not, these agencies don't respond the way they should. Oftentimes, a mother who reports to abuse to family court ends up losing custody of her children, and sometimes, in some cases, isn't allowed to see them at all, not allowed to help them heal. Psychologists would tell you that, a child who's been abused, the only chance they have of healing from adverse childhood experiences is with the love and support and belief of their primary attachment figure, which they are being deprived of. A lot of times family court judges defer to reports from Child Protective Services, and they're not, executed in a judicious manner. There's a lot of assumptions, there's a lot of bias against a woman who's in duress. A child can report that they're being abused, but they're not believed because of their age, and mothers are accused of coaching the child. Even if the child has injuries, sometimes they'll say it happened at a playground, the abusers are believed. When does an abuser ever admit to abusing a child? But even when there's unequivocal proof of abuse, it's not prosecuted, it's not handled properly, and CPS reports are indicated against the protecting parent. An indicated report means that there's evidence of abuse, and the abusing parent ends up with unsupervised visitation or custody entirely. And a lot of times, it takes a while for a person to process, trauma, and reports aren't often made to law enforcement immediately. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But what's happened, in my experience and in that of many of the women I work with in Amicable in America, are that when they're reported immediately, they're not prosecuted, and then when they go back with the report that they've gotten, they're not prosecuted because it's too late, even if it is within the statute of limitations. So some solutions that I see to this is mandatory arresting of abusers,
Please wrap it up.
Mandatory oversight of custody evaluators, and some affirmative action to address the gender bias that's happening and the victim bias. Thank you.
Russ Bonk.
Good evening. My name is Russ Bonk. I'm from the UND Railway Revitalization Corp. And tonight we will have 4 speakers. We'll have Jeff Mizell, Kelly Myers, Father John Nelson, and myself. 5, I'm sorry. Lee will also speak. Sorry, Lee. I'm here tonight to talk to you about something that was very troublesome when we discovered it. We discovered some rails were torn up on the UND corridor. I believe it was in August of 2014 that you folks very respectfully passed a resolution stating that no rails were to be torn up or altered in any other way without prior legislature approval. And we're not aware of that happening yet. Not sure if anybody's aware of that happening yet. The public needs to know this, and we'd like to know who was actually responsible for the torching of those rails. And I say torching because they were torched. They weren't respectfully torn up. They weren't respectfully cut. They weren't respectfully unbolted. They were torched, thereby eliminating any future use of these rails. I know the Empire State Railway Museum could have used sections of these rails for some projects that they're working on right now. And this is just a travesty to see this happen. And the worst part of it is, the iron rails are loaded in Millen's dumpsters and on flatbed tractor trailers. And we'd like to know where those rails are going. Obviously, Millen's is hauling them. Are they hauling them to their scrapyard for profit? Who will profit from that? Will the county get reimbursed? Does the contractor get that money? These are a lot of questions that folks have. I think it's sad that this had to happen in that way. And this was on the bridge job out on Route 28 in Shandaken. For those of you who may or may not in this room or listening at home know that. If the rails are to be put back, this should be public knowledge. If the rails are to be reinstalled in some form, shape, or manner, this should be public knowledge. And it should have been public knowledge in the first place that they would have been torched up. Our primary mission statement in our group is to preserve these rails. That's why it cuts really deep. That's why it cuts really deep when we learned of these pictures. And I hope in the future that the county legislature and the contractors and the state of New York can alert the public when these things are going to happen, if they are going to happen again. This is a tragedy and a travesty. Thank you.
Lee Isaacs.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the press, and county legislators. I too am talking about the Catskill Mountain Railroad. My name is Lee Isaacs, and I live in Midtown Kingston, about 2 blocks from a section of the railroad that's about to become part of the Greenway. The rails were torn up a couple of years ago, and I saw the beautiful presentations of the paved areas with mothers running with their baby carriages and bicyclists, and it looked so beautiful. And then they took the rails up. Iron Horse, I believe, did it. And the rails, the metal rails, were duly hauled off very quickly before it was even winter. And the ties, the creosote-soaked ties, were left to rot 2 blocks from my house. Huge piles of them. When I asked why they didn't go in to remove the rails, I was told they couldn't get in. It was too muddy. That really sounded like a wonderful bike trail. You know how much fun it is to ride your bike through knee-high mud. And since it's 2 blocks from my house, and I used to walk my dogs there, I've sort of kept track of this little section of rail that starts back of the Walgreens and runs under a tunnel and presumably connects with the Greenway somewhere down around the Maritime Museum. I took this picture the other day. It's so beautiful. It really looks like a hiking trail, doesn't it? A great big pile of sawdust or chips, wood chips, higher than this desk. Grapevines swinging, either catching you in the neck or your feet. I could not get up onto the hiking trail with 2 canes. I took this one over the edge of the bridge by the tunnel. You see logs down there and sort of detritus. What you don't see is any way that a person could get down there with a baby carriage or a bicycle. I mean, there are $2,000 bicycles. People do not want their bicycles ruined. On the other hand, I also visited some areas of the same line where the rails had not been taken up. In fact, it was so nice after I took these pictures, I actually took a little walk over the railroad bridge. Beautiful little yellow flowers. The very presence of the rails allows maintenance of it. The people that wanted this green line have not been
Please be wrapping it up.
Have not been good husbands or wives of the line. I'm going to pass these around so you can get a better look at them. I'll be sitting over there when you're through with them.
Father John Nelson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, legislators. It was really wonderful to hear so much about the history, the deep history, and goes back 300 years. And of course, the railroad goes back half that distance, and we're really enthused at the railway possibilities in the future. Our engineers and designers are designing plans for a new railway system, and we're looking for partnerships with the trail people and other people to expedite that and make it happen, because we want the same things that they have on the other side of the river. And there is, by the way, a beautiful rail trail down by the Kingston trolley. Very, very nice trolley and trail alongside. We love it. It works perfectly. Hikers, trains, everybody using it. Here's a new design that we came up with for the new Kingston train station, which was located down by where the train is parked now. I just pass this over here if you want to pass it around. That's the train station that we're designing and we want to implement into full service. Okay, we have concrete designs. We're looking forward to meeting with the track committee and seeing how we can integrate a partnership and about how we can bring an enormous amount of revenue into the county via the railroad. So we look forward to any and all possibilities. Lastly, I want to announce that the railway system, our company, will be sponsoring Woodstock's reception, being welcomed into Hiroshima's Mayors for Peace program. And Woodstock is to become the 7,036th city in the world for Mayors for Peace under the Hiroshima program. A Japanese delegation is coming to make the presentation to Jeremy Wilbur on August 6th. It's going to be a very historic moment for Ulster County because of the implications of this presentation. So please try to make it out on August 6th for the Hiroshima presentation to the town of Woodstock, making it a mayor for peace. Thank you.
Jeffrey Mizell.
The last time I was here, it became.
Sorry, you can't walk in front of everything.
The last time I was here, it was plain to me that you're a thoughtful group of people, and I respect that, which is why I wore a suit. You're probably the first group of people to see me in a suit since 2004. And the reason that I'm here, we have a great opportunity to bring an end to the acrimony and the divisive politics that have characterized the debate between rails and trails. It's been a very polarizing issue, and it's made unnatural enemies of people who should by right be working together. We're huge advocates of recreational trails, and we're huge advocates of a practical and meaningful rail system, similar to, if not almost identical to what they have on the other side of the river. Myself personally, I can envision Kingston being the preeminent community south of Albany and north of New York City on the west side of the river. And we can do this, a quick look at the communities that are probably the most economically vital in the state are all communities that benefit from a practical commuter rail system. And the tourist attractions, for instance, in Dutchess County, like the walkway over the Hudson, as the speaker at the last meeting that I came to got up and made note of herself, that at least half of the people who use the walkway come up via Metro North, get off the train, and ride the elevator up to the top. So we have the building blocks and the elements of a very successful cooperation between rail advocates, trail advocates. We're not a bunch of rail enthusiasts and people who are only in love with our history, although we are. But we have a real and practical vision, and I know that you probably don't all agree with what I'm saying. I'm not asking for your agreement. I'm asking for your representation. I'm asking for your representation. You folks have to walk a kind of a fine line. It's kind of a funny business, because on the one hand we ask you for your best judgment, and then on the other hand we ask you to suspend your judgment and be our representatives. And so I don't know how you deal with that, but I'm asking you to please, to some extent, suspend your own agenda, represent what is really a very sizable portion of the public that's come out of the woodwork. This whole debate has kind of given birth to this revitalization project. You have a lot of people, at least half the people who are aware of this issue would consider it a disaster if the rails were torn up. So I'm asking you, please, bring us to the table, take us seriously. We're not what happened in the past. This is not about a tourist railroad, and it's not about a mere 14-mile bike path. We want more than that. It's about building Kingston into the kind of community that it should be. We want what they have on the other side of the river. So please bring us to the table. Take us seriously. Thank you very much.
Joseph Wolf.
Evening, and thank you again. Speaking as to ask you, please do not authorize the removal of a single inch of the railroad at this time. Build the rail and trail sections first, and use that time to further study engineering options for the rail-only designated sections to allow for both rail and trail. Explore options like the south side of the reservoir, where there are already 3 miles of paved trail and grass right-of-way access roads already exist. The views on the south side, 270 degrees or so, are amazing. The limited views on the north side, in my opinion, are really kind of terrible. There's not much to see on the north side, and it'd be kind of disappointing to bike up there compared to the view on the south side. Please require the trail advocates to actually complete existing projects before starting a whole new project on the UND corridor. The trail on 209 south of Hurley is not finished. It's not appropriate for bikes, wheelchairs, or strollers. As was mentioned, project over on Delaware Avenue 9W is an overgrown mess with warning signs at the entrances to use at your own risk. The Cotterscale Rail Trail from Laurel House to Haynes Falls Station is dangerous. It's not safe for bikes or pedestrians, despite New York, New Jersey Trail Conference online claims of being open for business for the past 2-3 years. I rode and videotaped it last week. It is a disgrace, and it is seriously a neck injury for anyone who tries using it. I do not believe that a lot of these people have any real desire to use the trail. There's a handful of bitter homeowners living along the tracks who were either lied to by their realtor or didn't have a sense to realize tracks mean a potential for trains to someday run again. And they're using the claim of building a trail and removing the rails as justification for their own stupidity, rather than accepting responsibility for their poor home buying choices. Thank you.
Frank Nazaro.
Hi, my name is Frank Nazar. I'm actually a farmer on the disabled list in case somebody was interested. Teaching farming at the Center for Creative Education in Kingston. There's so many things to talk about that relate to the railroad, but I want to take this moment while I have your attention to point out a couple of details, things that are going on. We had a moment of silence earlier for 3 fallen police officers. It's very moving and important that we do that. It's even more moving and important that we recognize that between 40,000 and 70,000 people a day die for lack of clean water and food in the world. Very little or nothing is being done about that. In addition to that, studying things that will affect all of the decisions that are being made across the country and all over the world, our deficit, the federal deficit, somewhere in the neighborhood, according to my Siri on my phone, telling me that it's a $20 trillion debt with 1.8% interest due every 90 days. That's over 100% of our federal tax dollars going into service of the debt. So when we get these highfalutin ideas that there are any grants available to build anything, well, we're delusional. The money that is borrowed against our unborn great-grandchildren's futures is being squandered arguing about building trail versus a rail, instead of trying to work together as a team to get out from under it. I asked my phone, since there was no one else there at 3 or 4 in the morning who would listen to me, how much is the debt and how long will it take to pay it off? And my phone told me that if we applied the $50,000 a year that Ulster County is receiving from the Catskill Mountain Railroad for renting a small section of the rails, it would only take 398 million years to pay off the debt. So actually a little more, but I don't want to bore you with the details. So think about it, when you're spending money recklessly building anything, if you want to work together with the railroad that can pay for it with private money, you don't have to borrow anything. And someone mentioned $250,000 was a lot of money at the last meeting, and I contest that and say that $20 trillion is a lot of money. $250,000 is one day at Thomas, the tank engine. Thank you.
Kelly Myers.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. I know we keep coming back, so I hope we don't bore you, but we're still on track. And while it's exciting that Ulster County signed an agreement, this past week, we read it in the paper, with Catskill Mountain Railroad to finally get the trains running again. That's a great thing. We're sad that it's for a segmented, segmented operation. We, from the Ulster and Delaware, Railroad Corporation, we really want a full-length railroad here. That's what we talked about a few minutes ago. And I really think it's important. So I just want to oppose the agreement this past week because it's segmented. Thank you.
Mike Wendell.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and
I've got some good news for you and some bad news for you. The good news is this is the last evening that I'll ever come down and bother you, hopefully for the rest of my life. Seriously. And the bad news is as follows. First, a disclaimer. I've been criticized a little bit because I seem hostile and vocally loud. So between me and the rail trail people, there is no association whatsoever. The rail trail people are here to save the rails, and I admire them for standing up for their rights. And I'm basically here to save children with brain cancer and leukemia. And as you probably can remember, over the last dozen times I've come down to address the legislature, my one goal in life was to finally get sealed indictments against 2 or more individuals that may have conspired to commit disaster relief fraud. And now it seems like it's very close on the horizon. I don't need to explain the issue anymore to you because I'm sure that you've taken in some of the last 12 visits and maybe read my Facebook page. So just to explain it one last time in layman's terms, not to get too technical, the situation is there were $4 million left over to purchase and demolish houses in Warsing of disaster relief funds. A couple individuals in this building who work here arranged it so that the legislature would bond $5.6 million of Ulster County taxpayer money in order to use for fraudulent purposes. They were Resolution 62, 194, and I believe 343 a couple years ago. So I've detailed it in great detail on a website, and the whole thing was Beatrice Havernack wanted the paper trail to end here with you guys. TJ and Craig and other people.
Please don't speak to individual legislators, Mr. Wendell.
Okay, Mr. Rock, I will talk to you. Would you like to be one of my witnesses for the prosecution? And we could talk about maybe a few years ago in 2012. I'll get back to you later, Ken.
Your time is up, Mr. Wendell. You're not behaving properly for a public meeting.
I would like to thank you all very much for your time and the respect of listening to me throughout. And as I said, this will be
Mr. Wendell, your time is up. Please
I will be here,
take your seat.
and I will deal with Mr. Rock later on. Thank you.
Philip Carreri.
Philip Guerreri, Kingston, New York. Life ain't fair. Get accustomed to it. You remember that comment? We have a choice. Forthright corporatism, i.e., a cash-only sign at the gas station costs too much money. Bel Air will be built the way it is. Get accustomed to it. Life ain't fair. Green commitments? Get out of here. What are we going to have? Forthright corporatism? History begins in Ulster County, USA, 1976. Prepared for 2016? Or are we going to get green commitments from our communities? Under capitalism, it is illegal to not protect the people public in the name of the Ghost God Corporation. Personhood? Excuse me. Individuals is plural for people. Peace is not P-I-E-C-E as plural. Make up your minds. Now, Mr. Almighty.
And Kathy Nolan.
Thank you. I just wanted to express my appreciation to the legislature for including in the budget the funds from the permits that have been signed with the Catskill Mountain Railroad, and to say that we're moving forward. That is support for the Catskill Mountain Railroad. That is what they asked for. It's consistent with the county's policy, and it's a really good thing. The permit structure is much more protective of Ulster County and the corridor than the arrangements we've had in the past. And these permits being in place now, having been included in this month's agenda, allows for the CMRR, the Catskill Mountain Railroad Company, to contract with Polar Express and bring Polar Express this year, which was one of their big agenda items. There also is allowance for the running of the railroad out in Phoenicia the end of the summer and the fall, prior to rail explorers coming with their rail bikes next year, which is also a really exciting development that is, I think, going to bring a new dimension to our tourism. There's several things that I would just like to clarify. The bridge on Route 28, where a very, very short section of rail that had previously been paved over was taken up, had been announced in Shandaken. I attended a meeting months ago at which that was announced, and that was a DOT taking. It wasn't something that Ulster County did, and the configuration of the bridge does not allow the rails to go back in place because the bridge is now higher than the prior rail bed had been. Would take an immense reconstruction project to put the rails back in there. So that is a section of the corridor that has not been used for any railroad use for 60 years, I think, and has no plans for any future use. But the other point that I wanted to say something about was at the Ashokan Reservoir. There are bike paths that the New York City Department of Environmental Protection has been developing, and the hope is that that would be a loop that would connect with the new reservoir trail on the north side, which is actually beautiful for hiking. So anybody who doesn't think that, glad that the trail will be built there, because trail folks will find it very useful. At Kingston Point, there is a trolley and what is called a trail, but it's really a footpath. And you can put a footpath in a very short space, but you can't put a handicapped accessible trail in that same amount of space. And if anybody needs a bicycle, that we have them in Woodstock for $25 and up. It's a activity that's open to the entire public, families and children and elders. So I think it's sad we can't do everything that everybody would want, but I'm really happy we're doing something that looks like it's going to achieve something soon. Thank you.
That's the end of public comment for this evening. We're going to move on to resolutions. Leaders, do we have some moving in and out? Do not turn the microphone. Did you turn it off?
It's on. Well, mine's on. All right. Mr. Chair, we'd like to move Resolution 327 and Resolution 356 into consent.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The motion in a second. All in favor? Aye. It's very easy.
327
on the consent agenda.
and 356.
We are short yes, with one abstention on Resolution 335 and 337, Legislator Lapp.
We're a short yes.
The resolutions are adopted 20-0, with the exception of resolutions 335 and 337, which are adopted 19-0 with one abstention. Legislator Lapp.
Resolution 336, authorizing the replacement and upgrade of technology at the Ulster County Community College campus at SUNY Ulster Stone Ridge, in and for the County of Ulster, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $300,000, and authorizing the issuance of $300,000 in bonds of said county to pay the cost thereof.
Allen.
Yes.
Bartels.
Yes.
Belfilio.
Yes.
Berkey.
Yes.
Briggs. DeLon. Donaldson.
Yes.
Gerentine. Green.
Yes.
Hepner.
Yes.
Lapp. Litz.
Yes.
Lopez.
Yes.
Lauren.
Yes.
Mayo.
Yes.
Maloney.
Yes.
Parity John.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ronk.
Yes.
And Worrell.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted 19-0 with one abstention. Legislator Lapp.
Resolution 353, supporting the redevelopment of the former Nevele Resort in Ellenville as a resort and pro sport campus.
On the resolution, Legislator Donaldson.
Well, I believe this is a memorializing resolution, so according to the rules, there's no comment on that, so I will call for a long roll.
We haven't classified it that way, so if you would like to say your piece without a long roll.
Long roll is fine.
Okay.
Allen.
Yes.
Bartels.
Yes.
Belfilio.
Yes.
Berkey.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
DeLon.
Yes.
Donaldson.
Pass.
Gerentine.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hepner.
Yes.
Lapp.
Yes.
Litz.
Yes.
Lopez.
Pass.
Lauren.
Yes.
Mayo.
Yes.
Maloney.
Yes.
Parity John.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ronk.
Yes.
Worrell.
Yes.
Briggs.
Well, I'm going to be outpassed here, but I have my good friend Craig Lopez is going to outpass the passer. This is, that's government at its best. This resolution, Lord willing, and the Nevele Resort goes through, will have long-lasting impacts on this county and will affect a region, I feel, between 30 to 45 miles in radius around the village of Ellenville. This is a great thing. You know, a lot of people were upset when the Nevele did not get casino gambling. I couldn't say it then, but I don't think casino gambling was the answer, and I think that'll will pan out in Sullivan County. I just don't think the numbers are there. But this is a win-win. I'm not sure why my fellow legislator is going to speak, but this is a win-win. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, anybody that votes against something like this is saying, hi, we're Ulster County, and we're not open for business. This is a good thing. I don't see anything wrong here. And you know, let's not send the message out because, you know, there's a million other cities and towns and communities out there that want business, you know. And so I'm a yes, and I hope that everybody will support it. Thank you.
Donaldson.
Well, I don't think one vote is sending any message in reality, but last month we had a discussion on a few items that my fellow legislator from Ellenville accused me as my representative from Kingston of being a little on the selfish side because of the way I felt dealing with sales tax along with the removal of the family court from Kingston into the town of Ulster. And so I was in a sense being selfish, according to my colleague to the right of me here. And as a result, you know, and I do want to make sure that when we take a look at what's happened in Ellenville, and if you people remember that Ab was here when the Ellenville Hospital was about to close, the very first legislator to stand up to try to protect that Ellenville Hospital was myself. And in fact, I invited Steve Kelly here, and he spoke, and as a result, eventually they did get the loan, and that was because of the work that Rich Jurentine did. He actually did a great deal of work on that.
Legislator Donaldson, you eventually going to explain your vote?
Yes, I'm pointing out that, I'm not against Ellenville. No different than when they had the Ellenville 1 million. I was one of the first people to stand up, even though others were complaining about that. And even though I was actually battling with the county executive over other issues, I stood up, one of the first people to stand up in support of that, and argued with those that didn't like that idea. No different than when the gambling came through. And in fact, our caucus prior to that gambling situation voted not to accept gambling in Ulster County. That's where our caucus stood for the very longest time. And when Mr. Chainer came and asked for our support, and the Ellenville legislators asked for our support, I actually went against what we originally had and helped argue the case that that's what Ellenville wanted. Even though in many ways it was against my principles. And then what ended up happening was the first thing they did was then file for a pilot after claiming all this time that they were going to bring all these taxes in. Now that same person is before us saying that they're going to do all this with this new facility. My concern, of course, is it going to be the same thing all over again? So, I have concerns over this, and you know what? I was thinking I was going to be voting no on this, but I'm going to defer to my legislator on the right of me, only because I look out for Ellenville, not only Kingston. So I will be voting yes.
Thank you.
Lopez.
Well, I think everything was pretty much said.
Yeah, when you recognize a win, you stick with the win. So I'm going to be a yes on this also. And I want to thank my colleagues for being behind this, because it's going to mean a lot to the town of Warsing. So thank you. I'll be a yes.
The resolution is adopted 20-0.
Resolution 354, amending the 2016 Ulster County budget to include revenues from the user fee associated with the tourism railroad operation on the eastern segment of the Ulster and Delaware Railroad.
Or short yes.
Legislator Donaldson?
Well, I guess I have to speak again. Sometimes you have to laugh to keep from crying, When we take a look at this issue, it was almost 3 years ago, not quite 3 years ago, and maybe 3.8. But anyway, the county executive issued an order to remove that they were in fault of their lease, and therefore the Catskill Mountain Railroad had to leave the facilities, leave the premises. They kept arguing with them. I tried to set up a meeting. In fact, I did set up a meeting with the Catskill Mountain Railroad and the county executive, of which basically the comment was, get everything out of Kingston, and then we could talk about you having the other part of the lease. Of course, they weren't going to do that. They just started something with the Polar Express, and as a result, they had to file a Yellowstone injunction, which is basically telling the people that the court will make that decision. They were forced into that issue, and they repeatedly, Ernie Hunt, the president of the Catskill Mountain Railroad, along with myself, repeatedly asked to settle this, both in public and in private, that there was no need to continue this. Well, $375,000 later, spent by the Catskill Mountain Railroad, and an equal amount of time and money being spent by Ulster County, and here we are looking for a lease or a piece of that property on the UND Railroad. Isn't that wonderful? So I guess you have to sometimes laugh to keep from crying. What could have happened with that $750,000? It was absurd, and here we are again. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood that. Thank you.
As a quick point of clarification, it is not a lease, it is a permit for use. All.
Give us 1 second. Yes. You're a yes? Okay. We're a short yes.
The resolution is adopted 20-0.
Resolution 355, amending the 2016 Ulster County budget to include revenues from the user fee associated with the tourism railroad operations on the western segment of the Ulster and Delaware Railroad.
We're a short yes.
Legislator Donaldson?
Can I just repeat what I said before, or no?
We're a short yes.
Just use quotation marks. Just same thing.
The resolution is adopted 20-0.
That's the last resolution. So at this time, I would be calling on Legislator Manager Green to read the names of those we are adjourning in memory of. One day we'll have microphones that work.
Okay, thank you.
After the railroad pays their bill.
Tonight's meeting is adjourned in memory of Sandy Ranieri, Speranzo Afuso, Paul J. Peterson, Carolyn M. Lewis, Walter Anderson, Rose Hawkins, Andrew S. Levy, Lilius M. Stegmeyer, Robert M. Cusack Jr., Harry L. Stewart Jr., Robert Harkin, Gertrude F. Houst, Elizabeth A. Osborne, Catherine D. Didis, Dr. Joseph B. Kearney, Elaine M. Corey, Jane Y. Carroll, Mary L. Apuzzo, Herbert B. Jenkins, Salvatore C. Nicosia, Timothy Buono, Margaret L. Anderson, Dr. Richard L. Bruner, Barry J. Ballister, Donald Ackerman, Robert J. Perry Jr., Darren M. Stade, Lawrence W. Jihaza, Sr., Joseph L. Scarcelli, Jr., Michael J. Doria, who served for many years on the Rosendale Town Board, and Helen Weiner.
Legislator Donaldson?
Yeah, I'd like to add Raymond Hall from Saugerties. He actually worked for the City of Kingston Rec Department, and he also was a volunteer at Community Action. A young man, only 42 years old, and he leaves family.
Legislator Litz?
I'd like to add my uncle Merle Elliott from Lamontville, New York, married to my aunt Vera, who worked in the court system here in Kingston for 30-some odd years.
Anybody else? Okay. A public hearing on Ulster County's application for CDBG funds for the 2016 program year will be held on August 9th, 2016 at 6 p.m. Legislative Chambers, 6th floor, Ulster County Office Building. The next regular meeting of the Ulster County Legislature will be held on August 16th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in the Legislative Chambers. Resolution deadline is Wednesday, July 27th, 2016 at 12 noon. Legislator Litz?
Mr. Chairman, motion for adjournment, please.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?